welcome to another episode of Your Own Pathway Therapy Conversations. And here we speak on topics that we've been conditioned to stay quiet about and the ones that rock the boat. But here, nope, we're not protecting the silence, we're breaking it. So let's own it. So I want to say happy Social Workers Month. My last episode, previous episode, talked about social workers and how we are great at systems because that is our training. And this week, I want to talk more, kind of delve more into that. Social workers, we are training these systems. That's our schooling, and how our training is to see systems and people and individuals at various levels. And this week, I want to expand on that conversation because this is not just about social workers, this is about therapists as a whole. So, last week was about social workers, this week is about therapists, all of us therapists as a whole. And I want to name something here because I think a lot of us were trained into this idea that our work is primarily at the individual level, the micro level, working with clients one on one inside the therapy room. And I'll be honest, that's how I was trained too. And of course, my training was, dare I say, over 20 years ago. So it's been a while. And if you are a newly trained social worker, therapist who is watching this, put down in the conversations, are you all still being trained to just be at the micro level? And if we are, I think there's so much that needs to be addressed and discussed and changed about how we are trained to just really focus on the micro, on the individual, and to focus what is right in front of you or the client. But the thing is, when you as a therapist, actually start doing this work, when you're in it, when you see the patterns over time, which I did over time in almost my 20 years of working, you realize something very quickly. Our work is not just at the micro level, it's micro, it's mezzo, and especially it's macro. And yes, we're looking at individuals, and yes, we're also looking at relationships. We're looking at the family systems. We're looking at community dynamics and the larger systems that shape all of it. And moving forward, it's not just an opinion that's how we've been trained is to really focus just on the micro level and to understand human behavior. Not in isolation, but in context. And I think one of the biggest ways we've been misunderstood, especially as therapists, is that we think our work only applies inside the therapy room. And because of that, we've been so underestimated about what therapists are actually trained to do. Because I'm sure all of us, I know I have, and all of us probably heard things such as, why are therapists talking about systems? Or what do therapists know about organizations and toxic behavior and how harm comes from the above? But I'm like, this is exactly what we're trained to see. So let's talk about what we are trained to see. And so, so when I was training in social work school, we had different tracks that we could take. We could check the clinical, the macro, which was really focused on systems like family and children and medical. And I think even through whichever track you choose to take, there's an advantage because again, we see so many things that it's part of our job, and yet when we talk to other people, who may not be part of our field. Sometimes they point out subtle things that we never thought about ourselves too. And so I was having a conversation with another therapist who is trained in marriage and family therapy. So different from my background as a licensed clinical social worker. And I was having this conversation with this person, and someone, an acquaintance of theirs, said, "You know what? You should run for local office." And at first, this person laughed because they're like, "Oh my God, this is so outrageous. Why would I run for office?" But then this person thought about it and realized, you know what? Actually, that makes total sense. Why? Well, because therapists don't just work with individuals. We are trained to read and see patterns. We are trained to recognize when something is off. We are trained to see the person again outside of things like systems, outside of this person. And we are trained to see how systems impact people. And so, as we kind of laughed about this conversation, we both came to the conclusion we're like, oh my gosh, yes, we are the perfect people to run for office or at least be in positions where we advise people who run for office or who are in office because of our background to see patterns and to seeing harm and what harm can do to people. But we also train to see what good can do for systems, especially when there is, foundational safety, when there is when there's good that is being completed or is being done for people and for communities. And so, for anybody who's watching this who is a therapist, who is thinking maybe I should run for office or maybe I should do something at that level, I encourage you to, because this is what we've been missing is we need more people like us with our background to be in proximity to those who are making powerful decisions that impact the community. And to definitely add more to this, we are trying to understand how people are shaped by the systems that they are in. And I think what has happened is we use this skill so often in our day-to-day work, day-to-day professional lives, especially in the therapy room, in the hospitals, in whatever settings that we are, that we've begun to really shrink this amazing skill, this amazing, I don't want to say talent, but it could be, yeah, it is a talent too, but it's a skill to shrink this amazing skill because we started to think it only belongs that it's so normalized. We've normalized it, yes. We've normalized it so much that we don't think it's a skill. When in reality, it is a goddamn good skill that is applied everywhere where humans exist. Example, like families are systems, like the court system, family court system. Okay. Our experience is so needed, especially in the legal system, especially in the family court systems. We are great at relationships, like especially like marriage and family, like relationships are systems and organizations, communities, they are all systems too. So when those systems start breaking down, there's the tension, the silence, the misalignment, the avoidance. And we've seen this all before in our line of work, just in a different system though. And I think this is where we've been so misled as therapists. We've been told to stay in your lane. But you know what, though? This is our lane. This is our goddamn lane. Yes, I'm saying goddamn. So I apologize for anybody who gets offended by that. But this is our lane because our lane is understanding people in context. Our lane is understanding systems. Our lane is recognizing patterns and breakdowns. Yes, the setting changes. Yes, the system changes, but this is our exact lane, and this is where our skills thrive the most. And I want to reinforce that the skill stays the same. And this is a part where we don't talk about enough, especially in our field, especially what happens when this lens is not in the same room. Because when systems don't have this kind of understanding, you start to see the same patterns repeating. This includes breakdown without language, harm without accountability, reactions instead of reflection. We see this constantly, and I say this um, same old shit, different system. You see this, especially in organizations and with leaders. You see leaders trying to fix behavior without understanding what is driving it. You see organizations managing optics instead of actually repairing what is broken. You see systems cycling through the same issues. Why? Because no one is reading what is happening underneath it all. And this is where we as in therapists, what especially when I talked about before, what in one of my episodes a few weeks ago, I did a therapy conversation episode where I talked about how corporations will only pay for what they are ready to be accountable for. And so one of my questions was why? Why do organizations hire these like pop psychology kind of people who give motivation, who give resilience, who talk about mindset, who talk about individual accountability? And that's when I realized, oh, organizations will only pay for what they are ready to face. And this is what I call cheap relief. Cheap relief does not mean that the people they hire are cheap, but this is cheap temporary relief to be an aesthetic and to show their people that says, hey, you know what? We're doing something. We're paying for this person to come and talk to all of us about resilience, about our mindset, about how to stay calm when there's chaos. And in this type of paying for these type of people, the cheap relief, the solutions that these people, the pop psychology or the people who they tend to hire, the solutions that they often make feels better, but it feels better on the surface. And it doesn't actually address what's really happening at the systems level. When I think of this, micro. So the people up here are hiring people to address the people down here and say it's you. You're responsible. You have to be more resilient in a system that won't change. And so in order to have any impact, the people up here actually have to do their work instead of putting the responsibility and accountability for the people down here. So I always like to, this is how I like to do my systems: macro, mezzo, micro. So, and to be clear, I also want to say different roles do bring different strengths. Business focuses on strategy and performance. And so, like HR, as I'm going through this, some people have their specialty. And so they may bring in certain type of people with different specialties and with different degrees. And so, with business, they usually focus on strategy and performance. HR, human resources, tends to focus on policy and process and legal. I don't know about you all, but I have been seeing a lot of people with Juris Doctors, and I'm also going to say Mel Robbins is a attorney by training. They tend to focus on risk and protection, but those are different from being trained to interpret human behavior and context, like what we are as therapists. So, what happens is the surface gets addressed, but the system up here itself is not fully understood. And this is where therapists come in. Why? Because we are trained to put all the pieces together, kind of like a puzzle, because we recognize the patterns. We are able to identify what's underneath all of this behavior. And we also understand what real repair actually requires. So, this isn't just about therapists expanding into new spaces. And yes, I think it's wonderful and I think we are so needed, but it's because of our training and our background that we will be a great asset and a benefit in new spaces. And this is also recognizing what has been missing in systems that are already struggling. Because when systems start breaking down, this is not new to us. We're like, oh, wow, finally. Okay, we're talking about this. It's like we've seen this coming for so long, and we're like, yep, we're not surprised. We're like, yep, we've seen this. We're surprised that it's taken this long for people to actually talk about it. We've also worked through this. We know how to read this. We know how to read all of this, and we're just like, yep. And then, our role is to just be objective and say, okay, tell me more. All right. So, this is why we are such an asset to spaces who have never really considered us. And so, I think one of the things about therapists is we are really good about staying in our lane because we recognize, well, okay, this is our specialty. Most of us would never go into law and, start making up theories about attorneys and say, hey, attorneys, like, you should start doing this and doing that because that's not our lane. And so, yes, as therapists, we do stay in our lane. But let's be clear about one thing. Well, let's be clear what that lane actually is. Because as therapists, we just don't sit in rooms with individuals. We are trained to read systems, to connect patterns, and to recognize breakdown, often before the system even knows how to name it. So, when we speak on systems, we're not reaching. We're recognizing, and that's exactly why this work matters so much. So I know that this episode, is and this is a episode to really talk more about therapists as a whole. Last week was more about social work and the work that we do. And as therapists, we do a lot of things too. And I hope this episode was helpful for anybody who is in therapy or who questions why, as therapists, we're such an asset to have in spaces that probably never consider us. And so I hope this was helpful. And if you're a therapist, if you have an experience, or if you want to share your experience or expertise about how you've been in other spaces and has really helped those spaces, I would love to hear your story. So, again, this is all I have for you all this week. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And this is Your Own Pathway, where therapy conversations are longer silence, and we own it. As always, take care of yourselves. I will see y'all next time. Bye.